Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Infinite Beliefs, where we talk about all kinds of beliefs people have, everything from Area 51 to mermaids and why people hold on to them. My name is Gwen Dolan, and I will be your host this evening, or morning, or whatever time of the day it is for you. This week's episode is very near and dear to my heart because it's actually something that I believe in, and it's probably something that a lot of listeners believe in too. This belief has been getting a lot of buzz recently. That's right, you guessed it. We are going to be talking about astrology. In the media, we see BuzzFeed videos like astrologers guess people's signs, and more apps like CoStar increasing in popularity. CoStar is a pretty popular app among millennials, with over 400,000 downloads. Its aim is to bring astrology into the modern era, and it does that by asking users to tell the app their date, place, and time of birth. This allows the app to create your birth chart, and from that, it gives you a personalized horoscope. Today, mine was, the best thing to do today is to dive into your work. And hey, look at me now. This app has gained so much traction because of how hyper-personalized it is. CoStar relies on people's tendency to accept generally worded statements as long as they believe it was written specifically for them. As I mentioned, you have to put personal information into the app so it can give you accurate horoscopes that are specifically for you. This is known as the Barnum effect, and it's no wonder people fall prey to this. Folks, I'm really excited about this week's episode. I am biased as I do hold beliefs in astrology, but I try to stay as neutral as possible throughout these interviews. But before we get into it, I'm sure there's someone out there who's like, wait, what even is astrology? So for that person, here we go. Astrology's beginnings date back to Babylonian times, and for over 2,000 years, astrology and astronomy were the same science. They used their astrology charts to predict the seasons and celestial events. As the science spread from the Greeks to the Arabs to the world, it was a council tool used by kings and emperors. In more modern times, astrology is the study of the astronomical positions of planets and their effects to events on Earth. If you're sitting there and thinking, wait, where does the zodiac come in? What's with all these horoscopes? Just hold on, I'm getting there. The zodiac was originally used by ancient Egyptians. They identified 12 constellations that were linked to the changing of seasons and named them after animals or people, and link these to the 12 lunar cycles, or months, it takes for the sun to take a trip around the Earth. Our horoscope is a chart or a map with Earth at its center. Properly interpreted, it is meant to reveal insight into someone's personality and trends in their life. Alright, so for our first guest, I am bringing in a fellow believer and a good friend of mine, Addie. Addie is a 23-year-old creative young professional living in Toronto. Originally from Halifax, Nova Scotia, she moved a couple different places to further her education, but recently settled in Ontario. In her spare time, she enjoys crafting, watching Riverdale, and learning more about Toronto neighborhoods. For our interview, she graciously let me come over to her apartment. And so, I made my way up a narrow 3-flight staircase, and winded, she greeted me.
Hi!
Hi! So nice to see you.
You too! Come in, come in. You can just put your shoes wherever. Do you want something? Coffee, tea?
Just some water would be so great. Wow, this place is funky. And oh my gosh, I love the orange cushions. Okay, friends, I am not joking. In her living room were the most 60s couches I have ever seen. They were bright orange, and yes, we got to sit on them. Thank you so much for being on my show. I'm so excited to have you.
Thanks for inviting me. I am ready to talk about astrology.
So firstly, what is your sun sign, and do you think it represents you well?
This is too funny because we were literally talking about this a couple weeks ago. I am a Virgo, and I do think it represents me well in a lot of ways, but some characteristics of Virgos I just don't see in myself.
Alright, let's break that down a little. What does represent you, and what doesn't?
As a Virgo woman, I can see myself as being very unaware of my draw on others. I'm pretty shy and scared in relationships at first, but then I really flourish in them. I love being clean and organized, and I follow recipes to a T. But a common belief of Virgos is that we're all work and no play, and I don't think that's true. I mean, I love to have a good time. I'm also not the most practical in bigger life decisions. I mean, I get really restless, and I've been city hopping since my early 20s.
Oh, interesting. So from the sounds of it, your sign doesn't fit you 100%.
No, but it's not supposed to. No one sign can perfectly capture everyone. There's always going to be nuances. But that doesn't make me any less of a Virgo.
What initially got you interested in astrology?
Growing up, it was just always something I heard about online. From my early days on Tumblr to even now in my days on Instagram, I read about it all the time and it sparked my interest. I think it's easy to get lost in those algorithms though. When you interact with something online of a particular subject, whether it's just by clicking on it or by liking it, the platform you're using makes note of it and it's going to give you more content like that.
Side note, this is so true. My boyfriend is obsessed with domesticated raccoons, and so I send him Facebook videos of raccoons when I come across them. Now that I interact with them, I see them way more than I ever used to.
It was so easy to learn more about it. Everyone I was following was sharing and liking posts about astrology, and if everyone else is learning about it, it must be true, right?
Okay, so this is actually something called the false consensus effect. Addie here got lost in online algorithms, which biased her into thinking that astrology is a widely held belief. This happens all the time. People who really love cats tend to think that more people love cats than someone who loves dogs. And this is easy to do because you're not going to look for information on why cats suck when you love them. Similarly, you might not want to engage with media that says astrology is a bunch of wumbo jumbo when you're just trying to figure out how many air sign placements are in your birth chart. Which, speaking of, have you looked at your birth chart at all?
Have I ever?
Okay, perfect. You mentioned you don't always feel 100% like a Virgo. Do you think it's because of the other signs in your birth chart?
Absolutely. My sun sign represents my personality, my goals, and my life's purpose. My moon sign represents my emotions and inner mood, and my ascending shows how I present myself to the world. These three are known as the big three.
Okay, folks. So, I did a sort of fact check on this, and she was spot on. The sun represents our ego and our basic identity. Our moon shapes the subconscious and holds our deepest desires. And the ascending or rising sign is the way you come across to others. Also on this website, they have an entire tab where you can learn all about new moons, planets in your chart, learning to read astrology charts, including your birth chart, and way more. I also did some digging on what exactly she meant by the big three, and stumbled on a blog written by someone who practices astrology and intuitive magic. Apparently, understanding the big three helps them have an overview of their clients, and just looking at your sun sign is too limiting. These placements have the most pull and can help you or whoever is helping you with some cosmic guidance get a good snapshot at your person. Pretty interesting. Okay, enough from me. Let's hear some more from Addie.
Often, I find just looking at my sun sign isn't the most helpful, especially because I don't fully identify with it. But it's just one piece of the puzzle. Whenever I'm looking for some guidance, looking at my big three or even my whole birth chart is really helpful. Recently, my honey and I got into a small fight because I felt like he was being a little clingy. I was looking at my birth chart though, and I realized that my Venus is in Gemini, so of course I felt this way.
Does this sound familiar? This is something called confirmation bias. Confirmation bias refers to the tendency for people to emphasize outcomes that confirm their beliefs. Addie was looking for an explanation as to why she felt her boyfriend was being clingy, and narrowed down on an outcome, the outcome being her Venus is in Gemini, to explain it. She also didn't take any time to look for information that might disconfirm this belief, which further confirmed the explanation.
I find it to be really helpful in confirming my feelings and reactions to whatever life situation I'm dealing with. Plus, it's fun.
Definitely. Thanks so much for coming in, or rather, letting me come over, Addie. For our next interview, I met up with local Toronto astrologer Nyx, spelled Nyx. I looked up what this meant, and it literally means goddess of the night. Could you have a more fitting name? I think not. Nix has been a full-time astrologer for over 20 years and balances her time between doing birth chart readings, freelance articles, blog posts, and events on weekends. In her spare time, she enjoys hanging out with her hairless cat, Claude, playing pool, and finding the best tacos in town. For our interview, I headed over to Astrology studio space. The outside was just as mystical as the inside. There was a neon sign shaped like a crystal ball and salt lamps in the windows. I walked up a couple steps and knocked on her door, and there she was, wearing a floor-length black fitted gown with gold earrings shaped like a crescent moon and bright blue nail polish.
Hi, Gwen?
Hi, yeah. Thanks for having me.
Of course, come on in and make yourself comfortable.
Inside was a pretty modern space. We sat at a wood table with tarot cards, tea, and a candle burning in the middle. Behind Nick's was a wall full of different framed prints and paintings. So we got comfy and jumped right into the interview. I am so excited to be here and to chat with you.
I'm so excited that you're excited. I always love talking astrology.
Amazing. Let's jump right in. What is your astrology sun sign, and do you think it represents you well?
Well, I'm a Leo, and I actually do identify really strongly with my sun sign. Leos kind of have a bad rep for being really egotistic and self-centered, but we're actually people pleasers and we just want to be admired. And I think it does show my inner self, but I know it's not my whole self.
Was this strong connection to your sun sign a contributing factor to your attraction in the astrology profession?
It's actually a bit of a funny story. So I went to school for business and worked at a bank in the business district for a year or two post-grad. And I really liked the job at first, but about a year into it, my interest dwindled. I found there was no room for growth there, and I'd gotten really good at the job I was doing. So I was doing it a lot faster and had a little bit more or a lot more downtime. I started looking into astrology, and the first time I did my birth chart, I had kind of like an oh moment, like, oh yeah, this explains a lot. So I started doing my coworkers' birth charts to explain how they interacted with one another, and it was really interesting. Eventually, I started advertising to my friends, family, and coworkers that I was doing chart readings, and it picked up. People were really receptive. Sometimes, though, clients are like stone-faced through the entire reading, and it's really hard to tell what their energy is. When a client is enthused with what I am telling them, it's so much easier to tell that I'm doing a good job, and we can really hone in on the details they're more reactive to.
Gwen here. Interestingly enough, this is a social determinant of beliefs called sharpening and leveling. It's commonly used to make stories more interesting to the audience. And I guess the astrologer is kind of telling a story. Sharpening refers to really honing in on those central details. So in this case, the details the client is receptive to. And leveling refers to glossing over peripheral details. If Nyx is telling a client that her Scorpio moon is making her emotional, but her Aquarius and Mars is going to keep her level-headed, and the client is really receptive to hearing that she's level-headed, Nyx is probably going to expand on her Aquarius and Mars and forget about the Scorpio moon. But that's what the client wants to hear, hence sharpening and leveling. Now, this isn't exactly contributing to her belief, but she is helping to perpetuate the beliefs in others.
After about 8 months of juggling both jobs, I decided to quit my job at the bank and do astrology full-time. And here I am, 20 years later.
And you've never looked back.
I've never looked back. I had a couple moments of, was this the right decision? But I just wasn't happy at the job anymore. And I wanted to help people more and create personal connections.
From all of these years, what have you learned about the world and yourself through astrology?
Oh, that's a big question. I think my biggest lesson has been trusting the stars. The cosmos influence our behavior, and knowing what's happening in the sky helps me understand why I am acting and feeling this way. It's almost like a heads up, knowing what's going to happen and then noticing how my behavior is changing. Right now, Mercury is in retrograde in Scorpio, which means that intimacy is coming into the forefront of my life, and when I'm asking things of myself or those in my life, I need to be prepared for the honest truth. And it's true, I find myself being super honest with those around me right now, which has deepened my intimate connection with them.
Hey, it's me again, popping in to give you some deeper insight on this. So this is something known as a self-fulfilling prophecy, which occurs when our expectations lead us to act in a way that confirm these expectations. Nyx is expecting that she's going to be handling a lot more honesty in her life than she normally does. So she was acting in a way to make this come true and thus confirm the belief. That is wild. The stars and cosmos are always giving you a heads up of what's to come.
Exactly. They're like my own personal crystal ball, and I can see the future.
Well, thanks for being on my show and for sharing all of your mystic wisdom with us. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks for stopping by.
And with that, both interviews were over. Whether it's cognitive factors or social motivational factors influencing a person to believe, hopefully you learned a little more about beliefs and how they're able to prevail for something like astrology. If you made it this far and are wondering, what can I take away from this episode? Listen up. You can hold beliefs in just about anything, but that does not mean that those beliefs are credible. Astrology, even though it has been around for thousands of years and is a belief held by many, is upheld socially because of a variety of cognitive, social, and motivational factors of belief. Examine your beliefs, engage with media that contradicts what you think, and be skeptical. As for astrology, I think that it will prevail as something people believe in. Politically and socially, life is becoming a lot more tense, and people are looking for alternative beliefs to hold on to, whether it's to relieve tension or just to try to give reason to everything that is happening in their lives. I can't imagine it decreasing in popularity anytime soon. Again, everyone, thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to tune into next week's episode where we will talk about vampires, including an interview with someone who believes they are a vampire. Bye!